ערב טוב. ברוכים הבאים לפסטיבל הסופרים והסופרות הבינלאומי במשכנות שאננים בתמיכת הקרן לירושלים. שמי רבית הררי ואני יוצרת התערוכה מאוסף דורון סבג שמלווה את פתיחת הפסטיבל, מוצגת בחוץ. התערוכה מקבצת עבודות של אומנים ישראלים מהאוסף שלוקטו במיוחד כדי לבטא רעיון של קרע, פצע, שיבוש או הפרעה, בעיקר בהתייחס לנוף המקומי. העבודות שנבחרו מייצגות עשורים שונים של יצירה ישראלית ואומנים בני דורות שונים, אבל הן יוצרות תמהיל עכשווי מתמיד, הלוחת באופן מצמרר כמעט, גם את הרגע הנוכחי, ומעידות על העיסוק ארוך השנים של אומני הארץ בפני השטח המשתנים של המרחב הישראלי. חלק מהעבודות מופשטות ומבטאות את רעיון השבר או ההפרעה באופן סמלי, אחרות, בעיקר משנות ה-90 ומראשית שנות ה-2000, מציעות מבט ישיר וביקורתי אל הנוף המקומי הטעון, נוף מצולק מבנייה ומחפירות, מרובה הפרעות וצלקות, לצד סימני התפוגגות ונטישה. האירוע ייפתח בשיחה בין האמנית, תחומית, הבינלאומית, מיכל רובנר, שחזרה לאחרונה לארץ מתערוכת היחיד המדוברת של הפרגים בניו יורק, ושעבודותיה משתתפות בתערוכה כאן. לבין סר סיימון שאמה, איך מציגים אותו, סופר, היסטוריון, חוקר אמנות בריטי, ששימש בין היתר כמבקר אמנות עבור המגזין ניו יורקר. גם השיחה הזו, כמו התערוכה, כמו שאר האירועים בפסטיבל, מגיבים למצב הנוכחי, לא יכולים להתעלם ממנו. תודה שבאתם להשתתף בהם, תודה שלקחתם רגע להתנתק מהבחוץ. רגע לפני, אני רוצה להגיד תודה מקרב לב לאספן דורון סבג שאפשר את התערוכה, ולצוות העובדים המסור של משכנות שאננים ושל פסטיבל הסופרים. It is my honor to welcome Sir Simon Shama and artist מיכל רובנר.
So, shalom hakolam. I first of all want to say, without holding the proceedings up, what an honor and a pleasure it is to be in Israel, in Jerusalem. We are in the diaspora fighting our culture battles about anti-Semitism, the meaning of being Jewish, Jewish history, the existence of Israel, everything. But our battles are like a playground compared to yours. So there's strangeness about doing these things at a distance. So, you know, when Julia asked me to come, I didn't hesitate. And I felt, I guess when the plane landed at Ben Gurion Airport, just about half an hour before the latest barrage of missiles, they obviously knew I was coming. You know, I think they exaggerate the degree to which I'm a threat to Hamas. I felt as moved, I think, as I did when I first came on a ship to Haifa. I saw Haifa in front of me in 1963. That's how old I am. So the other enormous pleasure is to have a talk with brilliant, wonderful, extraordinary Michal Rovner. Michal, I've known not enough of our lives, but when we did get to know each other, I think we felt we'd known each other for longer than we actually had. And it was when it was when actually I was making a television series for the BBC about Jewish history. And I was wrestling with what the titles were going to be. And a wonderful Torah scribe who lives in Beersheba, I think, called Joshua Baum. He was the one, so we're going back now to 2010, I think it was, really, told me about Michal's work. And I was swept away by it, by the relationship between writing and human animation. And I immediately thought of the Sefer Yetzirah, which is one of my favorite pieces of fabulous Kabbalistic craziness, really, that God created the world out of letters. It's very, very flattering if you're a writer. And I paid Michal the biggest compliment by stealing, really, basically, the motif of these animated letters. So the only other thing I want to say, and then really, first question to Michal, is that being here at this time, you immediately, art is, anyone who is not in regular business, trade, work, if you're in the creative world, whether it be writing or poetry or art, and when the world you live in is under tragic stress, what do? You have two choices. You can say, well, it's not my business. Art's business is art. That's the view of high modernism, you'll know, people like Clement Greenberg. Or, like Michal, you can have a response that art has a kind of obligation to respond. Obligation is too heavy a word, but it's intrinsic to art to give something to people, particularly at a time when the magnitude of a tragedy is so vast that the words of politicians, the words of journalists, forgive me if there are anybody in both those professions here, don't seem to fit. In a way, you're looking for something else. So, Michal, tell us about how you responded to October the 7th.
Well, what do you do? Just talk?
I know you. Yeah. You're
okay.
on. You're
okay.
on.
So, the last thing I was thinking about in the first days was art, or interested in. It was really, it was a major earthquake for me and for my surrounding. I was woken up on October 7. I was sleeping for some strange reason, which I usually don't in this hour. But, I live in a small house in a big field, and I have wild dogs and donkeys and wild flowers, poppies sometimes. And two of my wild dogs jumped over me, over bed, shivering, and started to howl. And I asked what is going on. I never saw them like that. I never heard them like that. It was really like, ah, like that. And one of them, very intelligent, Mimi, she pointed at the window like this with the hand, ah, ah. And I opened the window and I said, maybe they are shooting pigeons. And she kept, the other one couldn't even, do anything, bar. And I heard the bomb. And I said, oh, it's Gaza again, maybe. And then I heard the donkeys crying, not asking for food, but crying like, ah, ah. And I went out to the porch and I saw the massive flow of birds in the sky, and it was like something terrible is going on. And then I heard the siren, and all these voices came together. And the last thing I was interested in was art, as I said. And there was a lot of what do you do, how do you regroup, what do you do, do you need to run to get food? I always think maybe I should get money, cash money, what do you need to do, what do you do? But I mean, this magnitude of tragic events and danger and fear and horror and what you face and what you see and what you hear from the morning. But on October 10th, I was asked to go to the public library to install my work, Broken Time, because they decided to open to the public. And so while there was sirens, it really didn't make sense to me, but we went. It was my first, I was thrown to make the job. And the work is a round stone, cracked. It's called Broken Time. And there was this sort of strange magical moment when art met reality with the name, it was about the circle of the building, the well of knowledge, the broken tablets. But now it became about the broken time. But the next thing, I, again, was not interested in my work, but was asked by the civil, was asked by the headquarters of the hostages to come over and to see if there is anything I can do. And this is probably the first thing I did. And so this kind of, you gave all the talk I was going to give, what do you do in this time, whatever. But I did, throughout this time, I did shift from doing something in regards to the hostages, in regards to the neighbors, in regards to going to funerals. I also did my work. Mm-hmm. So the first work was signaling.
Yeah. Do you want to share that? Share that now. Sure.
Yeah, it's signaling. No, maybe the first thing I did.
Oh, you had the cypress. Yeah, sure.
The first, I don't have it, but the first thing I was asked before, you know, on November 7th, there was in Abima Square and in the היכל התרבות, in the Symphony Hall, there was a ceremony. They called it Shiva, even though it was 1 month later. And they asked me if I could take care of the presentation of the names. And if I can make it very, very short, so there will be time to have all these names in a very nice design short. And I said, if you want me to do it, don't give me any time limit. And I don't need any help. And it took about a week for us in the studio to create a film that took an hour and a half. And so between two cypress trees that are moving very, very slow in a kind of a desert landscape with a light of the end of the world, each name at a time to appear, to stay a little bit of time and to disappear. And the next thing was signaling. So signaling had to do with the hostages. And I did something that is very simple, very illustrative, like a Morse code. If you are stuck on a mountain somewhere and you want to be saved, what do? You go with your hands like this, and there is this red color and this kind of movement.
We have a clip of that, don't
yes.
we? Yeah. Can we
so
put that one on?
The urgency, the emergency, the heart, the urgency to bring them back. It was in Tel Aviv.
There.
On the wall of the museum. Can we turn the light off? Great. This is Azrieli Square in Tel Aviv. And this is Times Square.
Times Square, yeah. Yeah, I think, as usual, it's very...
Can you turn the light a little less?
Yeah, can we have it a little less and then a little less?
No, can you turn the light down?
Turn the house lights down. Oh, okay.
These.
Okay, all right.
You don't have a thermometer? What do you call it? No? Dimmer.
Minderlicht, yeah. Yeah, the last thing Goethe said in his deathbed was more light, mehr Licht, actually, but the opposite way around, that's... No, I think what I want to say is actually that, of course, you'll probably all know that Michal has worked with the extraordinary, somehow miniaturization of human figures or the stylization of human figures, which maximizes the sense in which we are part of the multitude of humanity, often humanity in distress and sort of moving from one place to the other, not knowing where you're going or what a destination is. This particular signaling was so kind of powerful, almost, tear-making, really, because I think what it did to me, anyway, I should only speak for myself, is connect two kinds of helplessness, It's the sense in which the plight of the hostages was overwhelmingly present. It sort of occupied everything that we felt, and yet we were kind of, and still are, impotent to a large extent to do so. So they are kind of hailing us from a distance that it's impossible to bridge. So this is kind of profoundly distressing and upsetting, and it is humanity at its, most fearful, really, and disoriented, really, in a way, uncertain about what anything might. So, and it still has that. Can I just ask you a very specific question, dear Michal? How was it actually? I'm so, it's extraordinary. It was in New York, but how did it? Did Pace Gallery organize that, or you did, or how did that display come about? Yeah, in Times Square. No. Signaling.
It's someone from Achim Laneshik. you know, from the civil.
Okay.
You know,
Did they come to
one of the
you?
guys
You went
that I
to
know
them? Or
one of the guys that I know from the demonstrations that were going on here, you know, from the moment of fighting for democracy, it was someone who was very central in it. And when he came with a group of people to my farm, as there are no Palestinians at all for a long time, to help me to pick up the olives with my neighbor. And like incidentally, I showed him the signaling in Jerusalem that I did first, and he said it should be everywhere in the world now. And then he arranged for this thing. But my gallery did put, you know, I mean, they made a small announcement about it in their page about that calling for the release of the hostages, which then brought, you know, this trouble.
Yeah. So talk about that and talk about Pregim and how that. And
I get a phone call. I'm watching television. My gallerist called me. When I watch the news, I'm always say aha, and I put the phone. I don't know, wherever it is, aha, you know, because it's the urgency, you know. I'm really not interested to talk about with my gallerist. Usually I am. And there's aha, and yes, yeah, good idea. Okay, so we'll talk tomorrow. Yeah, we'll talk tomorrow. So, you know, an hour later, I look at the picture that he sent me, and I see that he says the gallery was defaced. I wasn't sure what defaced is. I thought I'll look it up later, but, you know, the spokesman of the army is there, and I'm like, at that point in time, this was like, you know, I gotta listen. And later on, I saw these horrible pictures of the gallery, but, you know, the blood and the right-up intifada, I couldn't believe it. And he told me he's in Tokyo, and his father called me from New York, and the police department is coming. But all that I said, yes, we can talk tomorrow about the show, tomorrow. And then I saw Zionist artist Michael Rובנר and Pace Gallery are accused of genocide, flistering, of you know, reshaping a history and whatever. And the first thing I was taken by is how aesthetic it was. I said there must have been an artist involved in this, you know, the topography, I said, is exactly the kind of topography that I like, and the red over black, and it was. But the second thing, I was horrified because it reminded me of these images on Marais from the, you know, pre-Holocaust times.
Yeah.
So that was that.
Yeah.
The first chapter of an anti-Israeli Zionist demonstration around my exhibition in New York.
Right. It is actually interesting. I think we probably don't want to spend time talking about it, but how art has actually become a target. It's notorious in Britain and other places too that environmental campaigners, of which I'm one, not one of those, who then weirdly have taken the kind of, you know, the violation of the sanctity surrounding art as a way in which to shock people into. But this was something, you know, the vandalism of Pace Gallery, the red mattered, the relationship between red and memories of blood and so on. So it was an attempt really to blood splash the possibility of memory and any kind of piety. And it you know, it's the kind of iconographic version of the blood libel. You know, if Jews have to do something to it, they're implicated in slaughter. So this is the kind of modern way, actually, of making those kind of horrible marks. Can you say something about Pregim now? You know,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we have. Do you want to share? We've got some.
Maybe I'll say something.
And then we'll look at an image. Yeah.
Okay, and then
Any of you familiar with Pregim, which is Michal? No. Good. That's what we want. Yeah.
Doron is. Tanya is. Michael is. Amitai. So, you know, I started actually, as I mentioned before, I have wildflowers, and the Pregim, which are poppies, they grow in March. I started to film poppies in the lockdown in 2020 because I had a great chance to be finally alone in the field without having to fly anywhere or go anywhere or host anybody or go to the studio. And it was, and you know, I was very amazed, as if for the first time, by the, you know, the intensity of the motion that is going on in the field. Nothing stands still. And there was some storms and wind, and I was watching the poppies, the way they fluctuate with the wind, and kind of reminded me of a head of a person that is, you know, and this kind of, this flower that I was always taken by, because I also like anemones, but the poppy is so fragile. You pick it up and it dies or fall instantaneously, but if you don't water it, it doesn't need anything. It can, you know, with water, without water, between the stones, it always, it's there. It's kind of the, you know, the sheer beauty. And I know there is a lot of symbolism attached to it, but I never think about it. I might use it later on, you know, like in the end, the stamp for the end, you know, memory and loss and whatever. But I didn't manage to do anything with the poppies for a long time. I pushed them away. The series, it remained flowers in the field. And just before, I was supposed to have a show in New York, and I started to work with them, and my gallery said, in March, in the spring, you're going to have a poppy show. This will be wonderful. They will sell out. They look so great. The prints, oh my God, and they, look at this and that. I showed them something, you know. So it was in the mind of my dealer, it was the right thing to do. And I started, you know, to work on the series. It wasn't so lovely already then, but it was, October 7th happened, and it took me 2 months to even think and decide to go back to the flowers. What do you do as a writer, as a poet, as a writer, when there is a war going on? Do you, of any subject in the world, how do you feel about dealing with flowers at this point in time? And so, you know, but I did. I decided I have to go to work like everybody else, and I went to work. And I said, I'm not sure that there will be a show, but I did go to work. And I realized how the series shifted drastically, and they became, you know, the color came out, they became dark, they became, you know, like ashes, like burned, you know, whatever. The first decision is that they will be large, like portraits of a moment, of what you know, without explanation. It's everything beyond words for me of that time and what I've experienced. So I also noticed something that, you know, I was watching television, and then I walked out 2 steps, and I looked at the field, and there was all the time the horror and the beauty. There's always nature there. You know, it's incredible. There's always beauty. Even in the destruction, there is beauty. You know, and I started to think about the relationship between the degree of abstraction and the degree of destruction.
There is a flower in Picasso's Guernica. Have you noticed that? In the hand, next time you look at a print of Guernica, the only moment of hope in it is in the hand of the fallen warrior. And the fallen warrior is a shell. It's a kind of mannequin warrior, hollow. There's a tiny flower, which Picasso actually, in the last versions, holds out there. So the relationship between flowers and mortality and rebirth.
People ask me if this is my Guernica. I said the Guernica was so almost very figurative and verbal and whatever.
Yeah.
But
do you want to show it?
Before I show it, I'll just say one thing. It was in March that the show came up, which is all the South. There is something called Red South. It's when all the South is of Gaza area, the kibbutzim, you know, is blooming with red flowers. And then I came to New York with these red flowers, and I said, we are not calling the show poppies, we're calling them Pregim. And one morning I walked into the gallery, and I said to my dealer, gallerist, Mark Glimsher, I said, I haven't slept there all night, and I'm really worried. And he said, what are you worried about? I said, I'm worried that it's too beautiful, too pretty. And he said, no, it's not. No, it's not. And he walked out of the room. Okay, so we can now turn the light off.
That's very good. Clever boy, Mark.
I don't know if in this scale you notice that this field of flowers becomes a battlefield, and many of the flowers in this motion are like skulls. Also, I was thinking about shadows. The black shadows are over and not behind, almost like Hiroshima pictures of the disaster. The ashes, you know, on the ground, the fire, the lack of color. Maybe this one, a little bit like Fontana, who was cutting the canvas, cut of the field. Better than
Better.
And this one is, I call it a roadmap. It started very messy with no way out, and sometimes it's cut off. Just old poppies.
Can you say something about why you decided to do, you know, the silver tool? I mean, one of the amazingly powerful things about this series about Pregim is that they are multitudes and individuals almost as well, so that the very tall red flowers are almost portrait-like, you know, really. But the silver ones were extraordinary. And how did you do them? And yeah. And technically, how did you do that? And how did you decide to do black and white silver ones as well?
The first thing that happened is that it's not black and white.
No, I mean,
because there is red, but the green of life came out immediately. The first thing I did to these poppies, I took all the green out. And that was, and then sometimes, how do I decide? It's a matter of days of work.
Just happens, yeah, right.
But,
okay.
yeah.
Where have they gone, Michal? I mean, are they being shown somewhere else?
There is no plan for it yet.
Okay, we'll talk about that. They
So
really ought to be. You saw the response.
I haven't seen Simon since he saw the show. I'm here to try to get some good sentences from him because he saw the way you look at things and art. And when we met before, Simon said, you're going to talk about the work. I said, well, I did the work, and you will talk about the work. And
I said, nobody wants to hear from me. They want to hear from you.
I really wanted to hear Simon.
Yeah.
But you sent
well,
me
tough
a note.
luck,
You did send me a little note about it.
Well, I was overwhelmed by it, really. And again, you had a sense, I hope you all had a sense, sorry, I hope I'm not in the way, that actually, apart from these extraordinary kind of individual groups of flowers and the long mural, there were 2 rooms where you're completely surrounded. You're in, there was one, the big, with red as the overwhelming color, so that you're really kind of dissolved into this infinite field of loss and, intensely colored feeling of helpless, not so much loss, on the cusp of loss, really. That's something very beautiful that is not going to be there. So all those, all I want to say about that is why I asked you about what plans there were, is that one thing Michal does now, I'm giving the lecture, which I swore I wouldn't do. It's her evening, not mine. Is that Michal is amazing at having a kind of economy of emotion. That's to say that the means she used to convey overwhelming and universal and profound emotion is very economical and pared down and thought through, which amplifies the sense of human connection. Yeah, how's that? But it's true. It's true. It's true. It's absolutely true. So, if we think, well, maybe art can say things that the banality of speech and prose and journalism and all the rest of it, this, if there is any chance of reaching out to a world that right now is poisonously engaged in misunderstanding us, that is something, I think. Anyway, let's go on to, because, whoa, we only have 10 more minutes, which is terrible. But I would very much like to, on that note, you know, we are a choose life people, aren't we? You know, that's what Hamas finds so easy to exploit. We vote for life. But the first time I saw Michal's amazing installation at Yad Vashem, which I'm sure you've all seen, first thing, I was there with a group of, I think, 40 or 50 Chinese student tourists. And not only were they absolutely thunderstruck by it and moved by it, they were so thunderstruck and moved by it that they, because I was watching them, they stayed for 3 loops of they did not want to go into Yad Vashem. They were so stunned by it. So would you like to talk about it, or should we see it? I think we should see it first. What do you want to do?
Yeah, well, maybe we see it, and I will say a few sentences. Maybe I'll
it's so important.
Yeah, maybe I'll try to be fast and concise to say that I was asked to represent the Jewish life in Europe before the world.
Oh, it started. Can you? Okay, stop for a moment. Yeah. Thank you. Got a very keen projectionist. Thank you. Aval. Yeah.
So, you know, I was asked to represent the Jewish life in Europe before the war began for the first wall that you see in the museum, and it is a challenge also because it was a triangle wall, and what do I do with all this story? And I was given tons of materials from Yad Vashem, from archives from all over the world. And as I was thinking into materials, I did ask if there is more, and there is other, or there is different, and they were all different. There was scratch, there were short moments, there was bad documentation, materials in different, you know, some stills, some not stills, and it took me about a year to decipher how to even go to this project. The first thing I said, okay, I'll go there and I'll film something, and I said, where am I going? It's not there anymore. And the next thing, which you will see, I actually looked at the timeline of the museum, the architecture, and then I had the solution, sort of solution to the problem, which gave me other problems, which I will actually show you. But my decision was not to tell the story, to go under the story, and to try to bring something else. So let's look at the video, and I'll tell you. So the Yad Vashem is a triangle. Are we projecting it?
Yeah. And lose the light, the stage light. Split. Yeah, good.
So it's a triangle, you know, and it's a timeline of the Holocaust. There is a little light from above, and it ends with a window to Jerusalem. That's the end. And exactly across from it is the window of my work, what I was supposed to do, and decided, therefore, to make a landscape, to create another.
Do we not have the sound with it? There's sound on the track, maybe not. Oh.
We can have it. We'll have another version, and it's not good quality. I don't know what happened.
Okay, can we have the other version? Have you got it on there? That's no, I think the sound is crucial. Yeah, okay, there we go.
So, you know, it's actually an assembly of hundreds of pieces of footage put together to create a landscape, you know, to kind of a restoration of materials. So I placed some images in the windows, and you know, always in my work I try to erase a lot of details. So anyway, I wanted to restore all the materials. It took years to take all these parts and to create a landscape like a seamless landscape out of hundreds of pieces that I then called living landscape.
Geehrter Kongress, wir kommen nun zum Schluss unserer langen Arbeit. Und bevor ich die einigen Schlussworte
שהיופי המשקר של המקום הזה והתנאים הנוחים כאן שלא ישכיחו מליבנו עד לרגע
There's these very little moments, you know, that keep living forever, like a record that is scratched. Like when you want to memorize something. So all these are different films from different places, from different sources, put into this environment. And the way they occupied it and the landscape, and then the way they were erased of it.
Yeah. It is so tough to see that, and I think, you know, the most heartbreaking, I mean, the definition of the tragedy, the Greeks defined it this way, as that when you know what the fate of someone is going to be and they don't. And I mean, the most heartbreaking thing, you know, one of the chief aims of the Nazis, of course, was to kill as many children as they possibly could to stop there being another generation of Jews. And the kind of innocence of the happiness and the welcome, you know, the way people do when they're happy and making a little movie, and children particularly are waving, or the beckoning sign, was so beautiful and so upsetting as well. And the plotting of the little pieces of video and sound on a map, that was a genius, really. That's part of the genius.
That was my, you know, that was.
And we travel. Sorry, Michael. We travel from east to west. Actually, we travel from Shtetl and Yeshiva and Cheder and so on to is it Amsterdam, or is it the brick town? It looks like Amsterdam to me. Yeah, somewhere in northern Europe.
Yeah. But you know, the reason I used a map, and it was a good solution for me to start to create that, because it was a map in Yiddish, and I was so taken by it, and I realized that it demonstrates the fact that it was home for them, and that there will probably not be more maps in Yiddish from now on. You know, by children in schools. So that was that. And Simon, we have 3 minutes.
I know. I think we should have take one. This is typical. I know, this is terrible. Should be like B'nai Brak on.
Wait a minute. Would you like to show the memorial?
Yes.
And the 2 minutes?
Well, will we have time? Okay, why don't we might overrun by a minute or two, because we'd like to. Oh, are we allowed? We're not allowed. Oh.
Something we did together.
So she's responsible for us for interrupting your enjoyment of the evening, really. So yeah. So, okay, she's saying sorry. So I don't think we can. Do you want to talk? Shall we just say a word about it, or
the memorial, the jackal?
I don't know. Which would you like to? We've now taken a minute already by discussing what we'll do with the minutes. So
let's do makom.
Let's do makom. Okay.
But
okay.
You'll say something.
Okay.
You're allowed to say something.
Well, I did a series for PBS and the BBC called modest title Civilizations, and which was different for Kenneth Clark in that it attempted to canvas world art generally and non-European art as well. And I knew I wanted to finish the last program, which I was responsible for among others, but the last one began with the paintings and drawings of children. I hope some of you have seen it in Theresienstadt in Terezin in Czechoslovakia, part of an art class. And I knew I wanted to finish with Michal's Makom because it is really about structures. As Michal told me, which I had not realized, we're at the very top of what becomes a great rift going through all the way down to the Nile, to all the way very far south into the continental separation. And this is a building she built, and it could be reinstalled with all the pieces numbered, and was reinstalled in the Louvre. But it was built by, when I went there and we filmed, there were Palestinian workers. Do you want to say about that? So it is about a house that's separating and bringing together at the same time.
It started in 2007,
yeah,
when there was an intifada going on, buses exploding, and I collected stones from ruined dismantled houses from Jerusalem, Haifa, Hebron, Nablus, and so on, and the Galilee, and later on from Syria and Israel, and I gathered a team of stonemasons to put together something, to reconstruct it without changing or breaking the stones. And there were the two that are mostly seen. One of them was an attempt to create something complete, a mosaic of times, places, unknown biographies. And the other one was, a cut, a break, two parts of the history that we have, a possibility to. For me, it's, when you think about art, you always reflect something about reality. Maybe you sharpen something, maybe you ignore. But for me, this was some kind, I thought about it the last day, of an alternative.
Yeah.
Well,
we have to finish, but we're living at a moment of ruins everywhere. So the meaning of this piece is profound and will go on forever. And if you do want to see it, I think Civilizations is available on BBC Select or something. You can just skip to the very end of it and you'll see the sequence that Michal and I did. Got to finish. I'm getting really threatening signs from in fact, yes, throat-slittingly threatening signs. So I want to thank Michal for about
Okay, so you've been not my